Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another episode here on Gladiator Disc Golf. Today, we're answering the age-old question for all disc golfers. How can I improve my backhand throw? Or, how do I even throw backhand? If you're brand new to the channel, welcome, and please make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you're already a subscriber or you've been visiting my channel a lot, thank you so much for coming back. Today we're going to be answering an age-old question on how to improve your backhand and really just how to throw the backhand. The thing about throwing backhand is that it's a whole body throw, and it's very unique to any other movement in sports. All right, there's aspects of the backhand that sort of adopt things from other sports, but when you put it all together, there's no other movement in another sport that perfectly translates to the backhand in disc golf, which is why it is so difficult to master. You see, the backhand utilizes your head, your shoulders, your elbow, your back, your hips, your knees, and your feet. So basically, think of it as utilizing every single joint in your body all at once in a split second of a time. All right, so the backhand is something that utilizes all of those different parts of your body. And so today I want us to just really focus on each of those parts specifically at a time, and then at the end of the video we're gonna put it all together. The first thing that I want to talk about here is just sort of where to hold the disc, how to hold the disc, and all those kinds of things. When we do our test throws today, we're going to be using putters. All right, they're great beginner discs and everybody should know how to throw a putter. When we're talking about holding a disc for a backhand throw, we have to be very particular about how we throw it. And what I mean by that is really we need to focus on the nose angles. While you get a little bit more forgiveness with a putter if you throw slightly nose up, okay? We want to focus on making sure that we throw flat, almost to the extent of throwing nose down, because we want to, especially with drivers and some mid-ranges, we want to limit how much air gets under the nose, pushes it up, and makes it go, because that's a big deal with backhand. You generate the most power with your backhand, and if you're throwing nose up, you're losing that power. So what a lot of beginners do especially is they grab the disc and they sort of put it right in the crease here of their hand. And when you hold that and you hold the disc out, trying to hold it comfortably, and look, my wrist is pretty flat with my forearm. Look how nose up that disc is. I can cover my face with how nose up it is. So you do not want to hold it in between your thumb and your pointer finger. You want to actually put the disc between your middle and index finger. So sort of in that crease that's in between those two fingers, that's where you want to put the disc. And the reason you want to do that is because when you put your hand over it naturally, the disc is going to be way more nose down and flat as compared to holding it like this. And that's a huge thing. It doesn't matter if you're doing everything else right. If you're holding your disc nose up, you will never be able to throw it nose down. So it's super important that your grip is right. The next thing that you want to do is, after you have it in the right spot, is you want to make sure that you actually are putting your wrist down. All right, so what you want to be able to see is that your forearm to your wrist, to your thumb, and to your hand is all flat, okay? You want that to be perfectly flat, because that means that you are then throwing flat, and that means you are throwing nose down, and the wind is not going to be getting the disc, getting under the disc. So that's the first thing that's super important, is everything with your hand, making sure all of that is correct and you're holding it properly. The next thing is knowing where to hold it here. Okay, now first and foremost, just like in my putting video on the beginner's tips to putting, you want to do what's comfortable, but you want to limit that a little bit in this case. If you're coming from an ultimate background, like I came from an ultimate background, you're used to sort of swinging the disc out a little bit more than, or way more than you do in disc golf. And if you're like me and you were doing that when you were first starting to play disc golf, your shoulder is going to be in so much pain. I can't emphasize, like I couldn't even lift my arm above my head. My shoulder was hurting so much. And that's why I started to become forehand dominant. But then I've re-taught myself how to throw backhand. And you don't sweep out. If you're sweeping out and you're feeling shoulder pain, it's because you're sweeping out, okay? What we want to do is keep it somewhere between sort of your sternum and the top of your stomach. You don't want to be all the way up here at your neck, because then you're putting unnecessary stress on your shoulder. You want to keep it somewhere here. And this is what we're going to call the power pocket, okay? If you're familiar with any videos by Dynamic Discs and Danny Lindahl especially, he talks about the power pocket here. So, grip, wrist down, power pocket, all right? What you want to do first, and this is the first drill that you'll want to do, is just be practicing those things, grabbing a disc and getting it to where it's natural for your hand to put the disc there. Once it's natural for the disc to go into your hand the way it's supposed to be, you want to just practice moving it through the power pocket, reaching back, pulling through, reaching back, pulling through. And this is a great exercise because, like I said before, the backhand throw in disc golf is super unique. It's unlike any other movement in sports. So the more you do this and the more you get your body used to this motion, the better your backhand's going to be. You want to be careful about when you're throwing backhand is that you keep the disc on the same line, okay? And that's sort of what this drill is great for. You can be sitting down doing this, watching TV, or if you're in the car or something and you're just kind of messing around, just going like this. The disc should not be coming around you. This is bad, okay? Bad, bad, bad. Reach across your chest, pull it. Reach across and pull it. And just keep going like this. And you'll see that the disc stays on the same plane and the same line every time. I'm not turning, I'm not spinning, it's not all wonky in my hand, all right? Straight line, all right? Things travel fastest in a linear motion. So you want to make sure that your disc can travel as fast as it possibly can in that linear motion, all right? So we've talked about grip, we've talked about power pocket, we've talked about pulling it straight. What does the rest of our body do? Well, I can still show you the rest of this sitting down. Let's talk about the upper body. And guys, these are all things that you can practice while sitting down. That's why I'm doing it seated. So you can see that you can do this at any moment in your day. When we are talking about the upper body, the shoulders, and the head, all right, we want to be watching our disc come through. Okay, actually Dave Feldberg recently came out with a video talking about sort of watching your disc and improving your backhand. You don't want to look for a power throw. For a power throw, you don't want to look where your disc is going before it's out of your hand, because what that means is you're already looking, your shoulder has already turned, and your disc is now offline and probably on an anhyzer. Okay, and this for me is the most difficult part of the disc golf backhand throw, is keeping it to where I'm pulling it straight through, keeping it down, releasing, and then here's the next part. My shoulders have not rotated this entire time. The way that I see where my disc is going, and Dave Feldberg talks about this in his video, and I thought it was super important, so I wanted to repeat it. Your back shoulder, as you come around on your follow through, it should kind of catch you in the chin and move you to be able to see your disc, okay? So here's what you don't want to do, like this, because now I've taken this disc and I'm in a swinging motion, and really my elbow has become completely useless. But if I pull in a straight line, and I can follow my disc, obviously I won't still have it in my hand, let's hope, okay? It's gonna be going straight because it's been released on the line. My shoulder hasn't rotated back, it's just pulled through, and then this shoulder is lifting my chin to watch where my disc is going. The next thing is in the lower body. Let's talk about the hips. We want our hips to be engaged. An engaged hip is going to help generate that power, all right? Because you get your power from your feet up. So everything that you do in your lower body is going to help you improve your power. Everything on the upper part of your body is going to help you improve spin and accuracy, okay? So it's super important that we understand those two things. When we're talking about lower body and we're talking about engaging the hips, when you plant your foot, okay? Let me back up so you can see it. When you plant your foot, all right, you're not just sort of standing like this and pulling through, okay? You're locking it in. This is your brace leg, okay? So you understand, if you've played any sport, okay, anything that requires quick twitch movements, basketball, football, baseball, softball, honestly, some aspects of track and field, especially some of the field events, and the list goes on, tennis, all right? You understand the necessity of having loose hips and powerful hips because it's going to generate that power. So when you come through on your throw, you need to make sure that you are braced. Bracing is super important. And then you'll do everything upper body, but as you're coming through, those hips need to start turning, okay? Your chest doesn't turn, your hips turn. And for the first part of your throw, it should be initiated by your hips. So if I'm here, I need to twitch my hips and see how it pulls the disc into the power pocket. If I was to continue it, just continue it, and it pulls it right into the power pocket. So it starts with those hips to get that power. The next thing is your feet. Where do we want our feet to be positioned? If your legs are perfectly in line like this to now where my left leg is in front, you can't see my right leg. When I reach here, okay, I'm going to naturally start curling behind me. And look, I start hitting my body, which means my body doesn't want to hit itself, so I'm going to start curling around or rounding on my throw. And so if your release point for your discs have it to where your feet are perpendicular, you're going to start rounding most of the time. I would say about 90% of the time, 95% of the time. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is be a little staggered. Boom. See how you can see both of my feet in the frame? That is perfect because that means I can reach back now without the disc coming into my body. See, I'm just pulling it and it's coming nowhere near my body. Whereas if I'm like this, I'm hitting my chest with the disc coming across. So we have our hips engaged, we have our feet staggered. Now we pull through into the power pocket, our wrist is down, the disc is in that crease in our fingers. We're pulling through. Now we have the follow through. All the best and most powerful disc golf throwers finish with their non-throwing hand across their body. And the reason why is because they have followed through on their throw. If you're following through on your throw, it means you have put every ounce of power behind the disc. If you throw and you're like this, first off, you just toe dragged, which you just decelerated everything on the disc, and you've thrown it nose up, and you've probably rounded, and there's no follow through, okay? If you're throwing like this, when you're throwing your non-throwing hand, if you've noticed, it's always been at my side. You do not want to grab the disc with your non-throwing hand. Your non-throwing hand should be as close to your side as possible because it's going to increase that centrifugal force. There's not going to be any wasted energy. If your arm is out here, you're wasting all that energy out here. But if it's close to you, it's keeping that body nice and tight and putting more power onto the disc. And so what'll happen is when that's coming around and your body's spinning, it's going to naturally come up and finish and follow through. And so that shoulder is going to tuck your chin and push it up. Your leg should come off the ground, all right? It should not be touching the ground whatsoever. You don't want to toe drag, because then you're losing power that you've exerted onto the disc. You want to come through and then stop in front of you. Some guys will stop a little bit closer to the front of the T-pad, depending on the power. Some guys will twist completely around. But it's super important that when you throw, boom, baby X step, pull through, that you come like this. And that braced leg is going to spin. You're going to kind of spin on your heel or on the middle of your foot, whatever's most comfortable. That's pretty much the basics of throwing the backhand. We covered a lot of information in this video, and so I completely understand if you need to go back and rewatch it and try some of these drills. The most important drills that you want to try are putting the disc in your hand properly. This is a great drill for people who do not hold the disc correctly. You want to put it in your hand real nicely. Make sure it's flat, okay? Then the power pocket practice. Keeping that disc in hand and pulling through. And pulling through just and watch it. That way you get used to watching your disc. And then pulling through and your shoulder coming up, coming up. Now remember, when you're pulling through and following through, it's going to naturally lead your head. And then for the rest of the drills, you'll have to stand up, but engaging those hips that we talked about. It all starts in engaging those hips and generating that power. But those are all the tips I have for you on how to improve your backhand. Let's throw these AVRs and let's see how we do.